Captain Lara Klein stood on the bridge of the human vessel, her eyes scanning the vast expanse of space ahead. The mission was clear diplomatic negotiations with the Varknari, a powerful alien species that had once ruled the galaxy. Empire was crumbling, and humanity was the new dominant force in the galaxy. The Varknari had asked for peace talks, and it was Lara's job to lead the human team to make sure this delicate situation didn't turn into a disaster. The Varknari. Warship loomed ahead, a dark, menacing presence in the black void. It was an impressive sight, unlike anything Lara had seen before. The ship's surface was covered in strange symbols and ancient designs that spoke of a once proud civilization. But Lara wasn't impressed. She had seen it all before. The Varknari had the power. They lacked the one thing that made humanity truly formidable, the ability to adapt. To survive, and to keep going no matter what. Lara's team consisted of highly trained soldiers, each of them handpicked for this mission. It wasn't the soldiers she was worried about. It was the Varknari Queen Nerja. The queen was known for her ruthless tactics and sharp intellect, and she had a reputation for crushing anyone who stood in her way. Lara had been briefed on Nerja's arrogance, but she had never faced her in person. That was about to change. As the human ship docked with the Varknari warship, Lara felt a sense of calm wash over her. She had been in many high-stress situations, but she always relied on her intellect to get her through. Negotiations were important, but Lara knew something the Varknari didn't. Humans didn't back down. Not ever. The airlock opened and Lara stepped onto the Varknari ship, her boots clicking against the metal floor. She was flanked by her team, but she walked ahead, confident and calm. Her uniform was crisp, and her demeanor was cool as she made her way down the long, dark corridors of the ship. The Varknari's technology was advanced, but everything felt cold and oppressive. The walls were lined with glowing symbols that made the ship feel more like a fortress than a place of diplomacy. When they reached the throne room, Lara saw Nerja sitting on a large alien throne. The Varknari queen was regal, her long silver hair cascading down her back. She was surrounded by guards, but Lara didn't flinch. She knew what she was here to do. Nara's eyes locked onto hers, and a smug smile spread across the queen's face. "Captain Klein," Nara said, her voice cold and sharp. "I must admit I didn't expect humans to come crawling to us for peace. You must be more desperate than I thought." Lara didn't flinch. She took a step forward, her eyes never leaving Nara's. "I'm not here because we're desperate," Lara replied, her tone firm. "I'm here because we know how to negotiate, and we don't back down." Nuria's smile widened, her eyes narrowing. "You think you can intimidate me, human? My species has ruled the galaxy for centuries. What makes you think you can stand here and talk to me as if you're on equal footing?" Lara's lips curled into a small, confident smile. "Because, Queen Nerja, you may have ruled the galaxy, but you've forgotten one thing. The galaxy has changed, and humanity is the one thing you've never been able to predict." The queen's eyes flashed with anger, but she didn't speak. She simply gestured for Lara to sit across from her. As Lara took her seat, the tension in the room thickened. This was no longer a simple peace negotiation. It had turned into a battle of wills, and Lara wasn't backing down. "We'll discuss the terms of peace," Nerja said, her voice now low and measured. "But know this, if you think for one moment that humanity can coexist with the Varknari on equal terms, you are gravely mistaken." Lara leaned forward slightly, her eyes never leaving the queen's. "I'm not here to beg for peace," she said, her voice calm but deadly serious. "I'm here to make sure humanity has a place in the galaxy. And if you think you can push us around, you'll be in for a surprise." Nuria's smirk faded as she studied Lara carefully. There was something in the human's eyes that made her pause. It wasn't fear, it wasn't desperation, it was determination, something Nerja hadn't seen in many years. The human captain was not intimidated by her. "You have guts, I'll give you that," Nerja said after a long pause. "But that won't save you, not when the Varknari decide to crush you." Lara's smile returned. "We're not as easy to crush as you think." The queen leaned back in her throne, her eyes still studying Lara. "We'll see about that, but for now, let's talk." Let's see if your species is worth saving, Captain Klein. Lara sat back, her mind already working, calculating her next move. She had come here to secure humanity's future, and she wasn't leaving without making sure the Varknari knew exactly who they were dealing with. The room was silent as Lara and Queen Nerja sat facing each other. The tension between them was palpable. It was clear that neither of them was willing to back down, but both knew the importance of what was happening. This wasn't just a conversation. It was a battle of minds. A test of who could outthink the other. Nuria's cold, calculating gaze never left Lara's face. The Varknari queen was known for her intelligence, her ability to manipulate and control. But Lara wasn't intimidated. She had dealt with difficult leaders before, and she knew how to get what she wanted. It wasn't about force or threats. It was about understanding the opponent and using their strengths against them. "Tell me, Captain Klein," Nerja began, her voice smooth, almost too smooth. "What makes you think humanity is worthy of a place in this galaxy? You've only been around for a fraction of the time the Varknari have. What do you have that we don't?" Lara didn't flinch. She had prepared for this question. It wasn't the first time she had been asked to defend humanity. "We have adaptability," she replied calmly. "We have the ability to learn, to change, to grow. We're not bound by the same ancient traditions or rigid systems that hold other species back. We make mistakes, but we don't let them define us. We keep moving forward." Nuria's lips twitched. She clearly didn't like the answer, but she couldn't deny its truth. "Adaptability," she muttered. "Yes, I've seen how your species thrives in the face of adversity. But that doesn't mean you deserve to rule the galaxy." Lara smiled. "We're not here to rule, Queen Nerja. We're here to survive. And we do it better than anyone else." For a moment, Nerja said nothing. She leaned back in her throne, her fingers lightly tapping against the armrest. She was studying Lara, trying to find a weakness, a crack in her armor. But there was nothing. The human captain was composed, confident, and far more intelligent than the Varknari had anticipated. "Your species has a long history of violence," Naria said, her tone turning darker. "You fought wars, conquered planets, and destroyed everything in your path? How do you explain that?" Lara's expression remained unchanged. "Every species has blood on its hands," she said. "It's not about what we've done in the past, but what we choose to do in the future. We've learned from our mistakes. That's what makes us dangerous." The queen's eyes narrowed. "Dangerous?" she repeated, almost amused. "We're not as powerful as you think, human. We've seen species like yours rise and fall. They get too bold, too confident, and then they crumble." Lara's voice was steady, unwavering. "We've never crumbled, Queen Nerja. Every time you think we're down, we rise again. And this time we won't be crushed." Nuria's smirk faltered for a moment, but she quickly recovered. The human had a point. There was something about humanity that made them different. They didn't give up easily, and they had an uncanny ability to bounce back from the brink of destruction. The Varknari queen had been expecting a weaker opponent, but instead, she had found a force that couldn't be ignored. Lara leaned forward slightly, her eyes locking with Nuria's. "You talk about power, but power isn't everything. The Varknari have the weapons, the ships, the technology, but you don't have the will, you don't have the heart. That's why you're losing." Nuria's hands clenched into fists, her sharp nails digging into the armrest. She had never been spoken to like this before. She had ruled with fear, and it had always worked. Until now. Until this human captain had come into her throne room and dared to challenge her authority. "You think you can outsmart me?" Nerja said, her voice low, filled with venom. "You think you can play some game and win? My species has been at the top for centuries. We don't need humans to tell us how to survive." Lara's gaze softened, almost pitying. "It's not about surviving anymore, Queen Nerja. It's about living. It's about building something that lasts. You're too focused on the past to see that." The queen's eyes flashed with anger, but she held herself in check. She had to admit the human was right. Her people had been focused on dominance and fear for so long that they had forgotten what it meant to build a future. The Varknari had ruled with an iron fist, but their empire was crumbling because of it. The galaxy was changing. The old ways weren't enough to hold it together. You speak as though you've already won, Nerja said, her voice trembling with barely contained fury. But I have my own tricks, Captain. You may be clever, but you are still human, and you will never understand the Varknari. Lara's smile returned, cool and confident.
God, I don't need to understand everything.
Queen Nerja, I just need to understand enough to get the job done. And right now, the job is making sure humanity has a place in the galaxy. And we won't stop until we have it. The room fell into a heavy silence. The HFY was thick with tension, and both women knew that the outcome of this conversation would determine the fate of the galaxy. But in that moment, it wasn't about weapons or threats. It was about something far more powerful: willpower, intelligence, and the unwavering belief that humanity had earned its place in the stars. Nerja stared at Lara for a long time, her mind racing. The human captain had proven herself to be far more dangerous than she had ever imagined. And for the first time in a long while, the Varknari Queen wondered if she might have underestimated her opponent. The tension in the room was thick, and every word that passed between Lara and Nerja seemed to hang in the air like a challenge. Lara could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on her. The fate of humanity's place in the galaxy rested on this negotiation, but she couldn't afford to let herself be distracted. The Varknari Queen was dangerous, not just because of her power, because of her ability to manipulate and control. Lara had dealt with ruthless leaders before, but there was something different about Nerja. The Varknari Queen had been used to ruling with fear, and now she was facing someone who wasn't intimidated. But that didn't mean Nerja would back down. Lara knew the Queen would fight until the very end to maintain her control. "We've been at this for hours," Captain Nerja said, her voice sharp. "You've made your point, but I don't think you fully understand the situation. Humanity may have survived, but you're not invincible. We've faced species like yours before, and they all fell eventually." Lara met the Queen's gaze without flinching. "And yet you're still here, speaking to me, not some other species," she replied coolly. "If humanity was so easy to defeat, I think you would have done it by now." Narya's eyes narrowed, but she said nothing. She knew Lara was right. The Varknari had made their move to crush humanity before, but they had failed. The humans were resilient, and it was something Nerja could not ignore. Lara stood up from her seat and began to walk slowly around the room, her steps measured. "Your people don't see it, do you?" she said, her voice calm but firm. "Living in the past, you relied too much on your old ways, your old systems. But the galaxy is changing, Queen Nerja. The way you used to rule is no longer enough, and that's why you're losing." Nerja's fingers tightened around the armrests of her throne, her nails digging into the surface. She could feel her anger rising, but she held it in check. "You speak as if you know everything about my people," Nerja said. "You think you understand the Varknari and what makes us strong, but you have no idea. Our strength isn't just in our weapons or our power. It's in our unity, in our loyalty to one another. You can't defeat that." Lara stopped in her tracks and turned to face the Queen. "Unity? Loyalty?" She scoffed. "You rule with fear. That's not loyalty. It's control. Control can only last so long. People will follow you as long as they're afraid, but the moment that fear is gone, they'll turn on you. The Varknari are no different from any other species that relied on fear. You can't keep ruling by holding people down. Eventually they'll rise up." The Queen's eyes flashed with fury, but Lara didn't back down. She knew the Queen's pride was her greatest weakness. She was used to being in control, but Lara had seen it before: the cracks that formed when an empire was built on fear. "You don't understand," Nerja said, her voice quieter now, as though she were trying to keep her anger in check. "You think you can teach me how to lead? I've ruled for centuries. I know how to keep my people in line." Lara shook her head. "Slowly, you don't understand that you're already losing. The galaxy is changing, and the Varknari aren't as powerful as they once were. You can't keep relying on the old ways. You need to adapt to build something that lasts. And that's something humanity does better than anyone else." It's the Queen. was silent for a long moment, her eyes never leaving Lara's face. It was clear that she was struggling with Lara's words. For the first time, the Varknari queen wasn't sure of herself. She had been so certain of her power, of her ability to keep control, but now she was questioning everything. She had always been able to crush those who opposed her. But this human captain was different. Lara didn't fear her, didn't submit to her. And that was something Narja couldn't comprehend. "You speak of change, of adaptation," Narja said slowly, her voice laced with doubt. "But what if humanity can't change fast enough? What if the galaxy is too big, too chaotic for you to control?" Lara met her gaze, her eyes steady and unwavering. "That's exactly why we have to change. Because if we don't, we'll be left behind. We don't have the luxury of waiting around to see what happens. We have to act now. And if we don't, the consequences will be too great to ignore." The room was silent again, the weight of their words hanging in the air. Nerea had no response, no words to counter what Lara had said. She had been so sure of her own power, her own control, but now she wasn't so sure. The human captain had planted a seed of doubt in her mind, and that was dangerous. Lara took a deep breath, knowing that the queen had reached her breaking point. The Varknari were a proud species, but pride could be their downfall. "You want to know what makes humanity different?" Lara said softly. "We don't rely on fear. We rely on each other. We fight for each other, and we adapt to whatever the galaxy throws at us. That's why we'll always survive." Nerja stared at her, her mind racing. For the first time in her life, she didn't feel so certain of her place in the galaxy. And that made her more dangerous than ever. The silence that followed was thick with uncertainty. Lara could see the shift in Nura's expression of flicker, of doubt that had never been there before. It was the smallest of cracks in the Varknari queen's armor, but it was there. Lara knew she had to seize the moment before the queen's pride reasserted itself. Nerja stood up from her throne, her movements sharp and deliberate. "You think you've won, human?" she asked, her voice laced with anger. "You think that just because you've planted seeds of doubt in my mind, that you can walk away from this alive?" Lara didn't flinch. "I'm not here to win, Queen. Nerja, I'm here to make sure humanity has a future in this galaxy. And that means making sure you see that we're not the weak species you think we are." The Queen took a step forward, her eyes blazing with fury. "You've made a dangerous mistake," she said, her voice low and dangerous. "My people are not weak. You'll find that out soon enough." Lara didn't move. She could feel the tension building, the air charged with hostility, but she refused to show fear. She had been in situations like this before, situations where it seemed like all hope was lost, but she had always found a way out. It wasn't about force, it was about brains. Right now, she had the upper hand. "You don't get it, do you?" Lara said, her tone steady and calm. "You don't scare me. Your threats, your power. None of it matters if you can't adapt. You may have ruled the galaxy once, but that's changing. And you're not going to stop it by clinging to the old." Nuria's fists clenched, her sharp nails digging into her palms. "You think you know everything about the galaxy, about me, about my people," she spat. "But you know nothing. You're just another human, too proud, too eager to prove yourselves. And that's going to be your downfall." Lara shook her head slowly, her eyes never leaving the Queen's. "Pride isn't what's going to save you, Nerja. It's adaptability. The galaxy doesn't care about the past. It only cares about the future. And right now, the future belongs to those who are willing to change." Nuria's eyes flashed with fury. "And you think humanity is the future? You've done nothing but survive. Your species is reckless, arrogant, and ultimately, it will lead to your undoing." Lara stepped forward, her voice steady and strong. "You're wrong. We don't just survive. We thrive, and we don't need to rule the galaxy to prove it. But we won't be pushed aside, not by you and not by anyone else." The Queen's face twisted with anger, but behind her fury, there was a flicker of something else, something that Lara couldn't quite place. Doubt, uncertainty, the realization that she was losing control. "You're a fool," human Nuria hissed. "You think I'll let you walk out of here and tell your people that you won? You don't know what you're dealing with." Lara met her gaze, unwavering. I know exactly what I'm dealing with. I'm not afraid of you. I'm not afraid. Of anything? You're not the first powerful ruler I've faced, and you won't be the last. But unlike you, I'm willing to do what it takes to ensure humanity survives. I won't let anyone stand in our way. For a long moment, Nerea stood motionless, her eyes locked onto Lara's. It was as if she were trying to decide something, weighing her options. But the queen was running out of time. She could feel her own empire slipping through her fingers. The Varknari had ruled with strength and fear for centuries, but that wasn't enough anymore. The galaxy was changing, and no amount of arrogance or threats would stop it. You think you've won? Nera said, her voice quieter now, almost as if she were talking to herself. You've only just begun to understand what you're up against. Lara didn't answer. She didn't need to. She knew the queen's game. Nerja was trying to regain control, trying to find a way to strike back, but it was too late. The seed of doubt had been planted, and no matter how much the queen tried to hold on to her power, she knew deep down that she couldn't stop the inevitable. You've underestimated humanity, Lara said, her voice soft but firm. And that's why you'll lose. We may not be as powerful as you, but we're smarter, more resourceful. We know how to survive, how to adapt. And that's what's going to win us the future. For a long time, Nerja said nothing. The silence stretched between them, thick with tension and unspoken understanding. The Varknari queen had no response. The battle of words was over. Lara had won. Nerja turned away, her back to Lara, her shoulders stiff with frustration and uncertainty. The queen knew the game was over, but she wasn't ready to admit defeat. Not yet. She would regroup, find a way to regain control. The Varknari didn't fall easily. But as Lara stood there, her mind focused on the future. She knew that the seeds of change had already been planted, and no matter how hard Nerja fought, the galaxy was moving forward, and humanity would be a part of it. The atmosphere in the room shifted. For the first time, Lara could see the cracks in Naria's resolve. The queen had always prided herself on her strength and control, but now that was slipping. Her gaze had lost some of its cold confidence. Lara had planted seeds of doubt in the Varknari queen's mind, and now it was up to her to see whether Nerja would accept the reality of the changing galaxy or try to fight it to the bitter end. The Varknari queen turned slowly, her eyes still burning with a mixture of anger and uncertainty. She crossed the room in long strides, the air thick with the weight of her decision. Lara didn't move. She knew she had to remain patient. This moment could change everything, and she wasn't about to lose it by rushing in. You think you've broken me, don't you? Nuria's voice was low and bitter, but it held no real strength behind it. You think that just because you've made me doubt myself, you've already won? But you're wrong, Captain. You'll regret underestimating me. Lara stood tall, her posture relaxed but firm. I haven't underestimated you, Queen Nerja. I've just seen the truth. The Varknari Empire is crumbling. No matter how much you fight it, that's not something you can stop. Nerja clenched her fists, her nails digging into her palms. You don't know the first thing about what it takes to rule, she hissed, her voice rising slightly. You think that by talking and making your pretty speeches you've won? This galaxy doesn't care about your ideals. It cares about strength. And the Varknari will always have more strength than your pitiful species. Lara met her words with calmness. You're right. Strength is important. Strength isn't enough if you're not willing to evolve. The galaxy is full of powerful species, Queen Nerja. But those who fail to adapt, those who cling to their past, those are the ones who fall. For a long moment, the queen remained silent. Her gaze flickered over Lara, as if trying to find some weakness to exploit. But Lara didn't show any fear, any hesitation. She knew exactly what she was doing. Naria's shoulders slumped ever so slightly. She was struggling with her next words, unsure whether to continue fighting or to listen. Allow her to admit defeat so easily. You're so sure of yourself, she finally said, almost spitefully. But you haven't even considered the consequences of your actions. If humanity rises, it won't be without cost. We'll fight to the end, and we won't be the only ones who do so. Lara's eyes hardened. I'm not here to make enemies, Queen Nerja. But if you refuse to accept the new reality, then we will fight. Not because we want to, but because we have no choice. Humanity will fight for its future, but we don't need war. What we need is peace. We need cooperation. That's how we will ensure our place in the galaxy. Nerja scoffed. Peace. Talk about peace like it's something that can just be handed out. You think the Varknari will just bow down because you ask them to? You're nothing but fools, thinking you can negotiate your way to safety. Lara's expression softened, but her voice remained firm. Maybe peace can't be handed to us, but it can be built, step by step. If you would just listen, I've heard enough, Nerja interrupted, her voice cutting through the air like a whip. She had had enough of the human captain's words. The queen's mind was already racing, her pride stoking the fire of her anger. You want peace? You'll have to take it from me, human. The Varknari will never surrender their power. We are the rulers of the galaxy, and we will fight to keep it. Lara's heart raced, but she didn't let her emotions show. This was the moment that would determine everything. She had to handle this with care. If she pushed too hard, Nerja could lash out and destroy everything. But if she gave in, humanity's future would be at risk. I'm not asking for your surrender, Lara said, her voice calm but resolute. I'm asking for a chance to work together. We both know the galaxy is changing. We can either fight to keep the old ways alive, or we can build something new, something stronger. For a moment, Nerja just stood there, her fists trembling with the effort it took to restrain herself. She was angry. Yes. But there was something else, something deeper lurking beneath her anger. It was fear of losing control. The fear that the very thing she had built her empire on, fear and power, was no longer enough. I'm offering you a way forward, Lara continued, her voice softer now. We don't have to be enemies. We don't have to fight until there's nothing left. But if you refuse, if you continue to hold on to your pride, then we will have no choice but to fight. And if we do, there won't be a winner. Only destruction. Nura's eyes locked onto Lara's, and for the first time the queen seemed to waver. The calm certainty in Lara's voice had cracked through her defenses. The queen had always believed that power was everything. But now, faced with this human who refused to back down, she began to see a different truth. Power wasn't the only thing that mattered. Nerja began, but her voice faltered. She cleared her throat, trying to regain her composure. Speak as if your way is the only way forward. You don't understand. You don't know what it means to lead, to control. Lara's gaze softened even more. I understand more than you think. I understand that sometimes letting go is the only way forward, and that's what I'm offering. A chance to evolve, to lead in a way that builds a future, not just a legacy. For the first time, Nerja seemed to listen. The fire of her anger was still there, but now it was mixed with something else, something Lara hadn't seen before. Hope, maybe, or the possibility of change. The silence that followed seemed to stretch on forever. Nerja stood motionless, her face unreadable, her fists still clenched. Lara could see the conflict in the queen's eyes. The war between pride and the dawning realization that things could not remain the same. The Varknari queen had always ruled through strength and fear. But now, in this moment, she was being forced to consider something she had never truly believed in. Change. Lara kept her posture steady, not daring to speak, but she wasn't backing down either. She knew that pushing too hard might cause Nerja to dig her heels in deeper, but she couldn't let the moment slip by. This was the chance to change the course of history, to ensure that humanity could survive, not through conflict, but through cooperation. The Varknari queen took a slow, deliberate breath, her sharp eyes focused on Lara. You talk about change? Like it's so simple, she said, her voice quieter now, but still carrying a sharp edge. But change isn't easy. Change costs more than just words. It costs lives, it costs power, and sometimes it costs everything. Lara's eyes never wavered from the queen. I'm not asking you to give up everything. I'm asking you to see that there's more to the galaxy than just the past.
Ow.
Varknari have power, but that power isn't enough anymore. If you keep holding on to it with both hands, you'll lose it all. Nuria's expression twisted, a mix of anger and frustration. And what do you know about ruling, human? You have no idea what it means to be responsible for millions of lives. The weight of the crown, the cost of leadership. You can't just walk in here and lecture me. Lara's voice remained calm, her words cutting through the tension in the room. I don't need to lecture you. I just need you to see that the galaxy is changing. If the Varknari can't adapt, you will be left behind. All the power in the universe won't matter if no one wants to follow you anymore. For a long time, Nurja didn't speak. Her gaze was distant, as if she were staring through Lara and into some far-off place. The Queen's mind raced, the weight of her past clashing with the reality of the future. She had always been so sure of her rule, so certain of her place in the galaxy. But now, faced with Lara's unshakable confidence, the foundation of her beliefs began to crack. You think you can change everything with just a few words? Neri? A's voice was soft now, almost a whisper. The humanity can change the course of history. Lara's eyes softened, but her voice remained firm. I don't think we can change everything. We can change what matters. We can change how we interact with other species, how we work together to survive in this galaxy. But that can't happen if we don't start with understanding. The Queen's gaze flickered, the wall of pride around her heart weakening just slightly. She turned her back to Lara and walked over to the window, staring out at the stars. The vastness of space seemed to stretch out endlessly before her, a reminder of how small and fragile even the mightiest empires could be. I've ruled for centuries, Nurja said quietly, almost to herself. I've seen the rise and fall of species. I've watched entire worlds burn, and I've seen my own people suffer. I thought we could survive on power alone, but now?
Oh.
Lara stepped closer, her voice low but filled with conviction.
Well.
You see the truth. Power alone isn't enough. It's never been enough. It's the people, the will to survive, the willingness to adapt that makes a species strong. Nurja turned slowly, her eyes filled with something that might have been regret or recognition, something she hadn't allowed herself to feel in a long time. What if I can't let go of the past? What if I can't change? Lara shook her head slowly. You don't have to let go of everything, just the parts that are holding you back. You can still be strong, you can still be a leader, but you have to lead differently. The galaxy isn't the same as it was when you first rose to power. It's a different place now. Nuria's eyes searched Lara's face, as if looking for some sign of weakness, but there was none. The human captain stood there unwavering, confident in her beliefs. And in that moment, Nurja realized that this human wasn't just trying to save her species. She was trying to save the galaxy from itself. Perhaps you're right, Nurja said slowly, her voice hesitant but sincere. Perhaps the Varknari do need to change. But change isn't easy, and I'm not sure I know how to begin. Lara took a step forward, her voice calm but filled with determination. We can help you. Humanity has always been about adapting, about finding new ways to survive, and we'll help the Varknari do the same. But we need to start now, together. The Queen stared at her for a long moment, the weight of centuries of rule, of battles fought and won, of empires built on fear, all pressing down on her. And yet she knew Lara was right. The galaxy had changed. The old ways couldn't hold on forever, and if she wanted the Varknari to have any future, she had to be willing to change with it. I'll consider your offer, Nurja said quietly, her tone softer than it had ever been. But don't mistake my words for agreement. This won't be easy and it won't be quick. But I'll listen for now. Lara's expression softened, but her determination remained. That's all we need, just the chance to try together. For the first time in what felt like forever, the two leaders were no longer enemies. They were not allies yet, but they stood on the edge of something new, something that could change the galaxy forever. It was a small step, but it was enough. To make the impossible seem possible, the tension in the room had shifted. What once felt like an impossible standoff between two proud leaders was now a quiet moment of mutual understanding. Lara had been prepared for a fierce battle, but she hadn't expected the quiet shift in Nuria's resolve. The Varknari queen, who had once held her power like a weapon, is now considering something she never thought possible, working alongside humanity. It's not as a ruler over them, but as a partner. Nerea stood by the window, her back still to Lara. The stars outside twinkled, distant and cold, like the coldness that had settled in the queen's heart over centuries of rule. But now, as she stared out at the vast, dark expanse of space, the coldness was beginning to melt. For the first time in years, she wasn't thinking about keeping her power intact. She was thinking about something else, about survival. Lara's voice cut through the silence. You don't have to make this decision alone, Queen Nerja. Humanity is ready to help. We can rebuild together, if you're willing to try. The queen didn't turn around. She spoke softly, her voice tinged with something unfamiliar vulnerability, perhaps, or maybe a crack in her pride. You speak as if the Varknari can simply forget their past, forget the centuries of strength we've built. We've ruled for so long, and now you ask us to change everything. Lara's footsteps were quiet as she approached, careful not to break the fragile moment. No one is asking you to forget your history. Your people are proud, and you should be. But the world around us is different. If we don't change, if we don't adapt, we risk losing everything. It's not about losing your strength. It's about finding new ways to use it. Nerja turned to face her, her eyes tired, but for the first time in what felt like forever, not full of anger. And what if I can't let go of the old ways? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. What if I can't change? Lara's gaze softened. Then you'll be left behind. The galaxy won't wait for you. But I believe you can. You're stronger than you realize. You just need to trust in something more than fear. There was a long silence as the Varknari queen processed Lara's words. For the first time, Lara saw the queen's walls start to crumble, not just the ones built with power and dominance, but the walls inside herself. The walls of doubt, of fear, and perhaps of regret. Nerea's voice was low, but there was a quiet strength in it. I've spent my life building an empire on the belief that power is all that matters. I've made my people believe that they can only survive through domination, but you're right. The galaxy is changing. The old ways aren't enough anymore. Alada nodded, her tone steady. The old ways aren't enough for anyone. Not anymore. You've built something incredible, but it doesn't have to be built on fear anymore. You can lead in a way that brings people together, not tears them apart. You can show your people that true power isn't about control, it's about trust. Nerja looked down, her eyes clouded with the weight of her past. I don't know if I can do that, she said quietly. I don't know if I'm capable of leading in a different way. Lara stepped forward, her voice firm but kind. You don't have to do it all at once. Change is a process. But if you don't try, if you keep clinging to the old ways, you'll lose everything you've worked for. And your people will suffer for it. The queen's shoulders slumped, as if the weight of the galaxy was slowly shifting off her back. She took a deep breath, finally meeting Lara's gaze with a look of reluctant acceptance. I don't know where to begin, she admitted, but I'll try. Lara smiled gently, relieved. That's all I'm asking for, just the chance. To try, the room was quiet once more, but the silence was no longer filled with hostility. It was a quiet understanding, the first step in what could be a new chapter for both the Varknari and humanity. Nerja had not fully let go of her old ways, but she was willing to take the first step toward change. What happens now? Nerja asked, her voice a little more certain now, though still cautious. Lara's smile grew. Now, we begin the work. Together, humanity will help the Varknari adapt to this new galaxy. We'll share what we know, but it has to be a partnership. Both of us will have to give something up for this to work. Nerea's eyes flashed with a spark of her old defiance, but this time it wasn't filled with anger. It was the spark of, hope you're asking me to trust you, human, Lara nodded. I'm asking you to trust not just me, but your people too. Trust that the future doesn't have to be a battle for power. It can be a future where we all have a place. Nerja was silent for a moment, her gaze far away, as if she were seeing something new, something different through the window. Her empire had been built on fear, But now she saw the possibility of something greater: cooperation, growth, and strength through unity. "I'll speak with my people," Nerja said, her voice steady now. "I'll tell them what you've told me. I can't promise anything, but I'll try, for the future." Lara's heart lifted, her face filled with quiet hope. "That's all I can ask for." And so, in the quiet of the Varknari throne room, the first steps toward a new future began. It wasn't going to be easy, and it wouldn't happen overnight. But the change was real. And for the first time in a long time, Lara believed that humanity and the Varknari could build something together. A future where both species could thrive. As the two leaders stood in the silence, the stars outside shone brighter, a reminder that even in the darkest corners of the galaxy, hope could still take root.